Namaskar and welcome to Sales Samvad. Today I have with me Amit Agarwal. Hi Amit, welcome to Sales Samvad.
Hi, namaste, Saurabh.
Very quickly, I want to give some context about Amit. So, about 2 years ago, I had a LinkedIn exchange with Amit. Because I think I was writing about how we can like make sales pitches better by using use cases. And I think वहीं पे हमारी शायद बात चालू हुई and then we got to know each other. I figured out very soon that Amit is you know uh, writing a book, and very soon I
Correct.
think I also reviewed the book.
Correct. You did.
So from there on we just got sort of knowing each other, and I got my access to his book. I think 2 years ago. I still remember. I have the book with me. I'll just show it for everyone. Just a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the Ultimate Sales Accelerator. I have my copy with me in case somebody, everybody can see it. Let
Yes,
me
you can.
focus my screen. Yeah. This is my
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah.
Amit, I still have it with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So I was very, very influenced by this book, simply because it echoed a lot of my thoughts. It was a reflection of my own what can I say, lived experiences. Right. It is not
Yeah.
some just bookish knowledge, and
Yeah.
that is why when I started this, I thought that it's only fair I have a conversation with you, Amit, around this, because
Yeah.
people
Sure.
deserve to know more about this. Yeah.
Yes.
So welcome again, and I
Thank you.
want to sort of start off at the point where you've started off in the book, right? आप एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज लिखते हैं बुक में, which is
Uh-huh.
or rather a term that you use is called a salespreneur.
Ah. Uh,
आप प्लीज हमारे व्यूअर्स के लिए थोड़ा बताइए और मेरे लिए भी बताइए कि ये सेल्सप्रेन्योर क्या है, इसकी परिभाषा क्या है, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ सेल्सप्रेन्योर?
पहले आपको परिभाषा बताऊं या ऐसे बताऊं कि ये आया कहाँ से?
दोनों बताइए.
अच्छा, ठीक है. तो क्या हुआ कि अगर since you have the book with yourself, if you
Yes.
look at the last portion, which is you know, which when it ends, the book ends. I was for ending. I was asking a question. The question was, who will harness the true spirit of sales? So epilogue बोलते हैं ना, the last section, which is the epilogue of the book. When it is ending.
Right.
So that if you see there, it is there. So that question was, who will harness the true spirit of sales? And उसका क्या ना, मुझे उत्तर नहीं मिल रहा था, है ना. So book तो खत्म हो गई थी. Book was so I had to submit the manuscript ना, but that section was not completing. So I kept on asking that question, and at that point of time, the first thing which happened is that in order to say who will harness the true spirit of sales, the question was, what is the true spirit of sales? And then who will harness it? So that one question was answering two responses. So and I was working on this definition ki what is the meaning of sales. So वो आ नहीं रहा था, है ना. तो मैं मेडिटेशन करता हूँ और वो उस दौरान मॉर्निंग में मेडिटेशन करता था और मैं पूछता रहता था कि भाई व्हाट इज द, रात में सोने समय पूछूंगा. So during a meditation, this response came that the true meaning of word sales is S for serve, A for authenticity, L for love, E for expertise, S for smile. So serve with authenticity, love, expertise and smile. तो पहले तो ये पॉइंट आ गया. अब ये मेरा नहीं है, मैंने सिर्फ लिखा है, पर ये आया वहां से, यूनिवर्स से. करेक्ट है ना. Only thing is I was asking a question, है ना. So I am a conduit for that. I'm a curious person. I was asking a question and universe gave me. I was very persistent about it. That Bhaiya, please tell me, my book is pending. I have to write. so it came. Now once that thing came, I said, suddenly that term, in my mind, since I've been working in startups, as you notice that from 2010 I've been working in startups. So currently I'm fourth startup. So I have really enjoyed this space. It's really working in startups. In fact, once I had asked you, Saurabh, what is the experience if you work in startups and if you work in normal, what is the experience? And I think you have responded, most of the people respond 3x to 4x.
Right.
So that I was reflecting that everybody calls entrepreneur, which is very good. People who work in sales environment, especially in startups, correct? Therefore that term somewhere was there in my mind, salespreneur. It was there.
Right.
But then the deeper meaning of it came through that first is the salespreneur harnesses the true spirit of sales, the definition we just discussed. Correct? And then the second point, that salespreneur addresses 4 key items, and I will talk about it. The first item is that the salespreneur thinks the sales is social entrepreneurship, and that's the key term.
Okay.
Salespreneur believes sales is social entrepreneurship because it addresses 4 key items. What are the 4 key items? The first is joy. So I mean, you will notice that when sales happens, what happens? It creates joy. It creates a festive environment, isn't it? Any purchase order, anything comes.
Correct.
So the second one is, which is very, very profound, which is that sales drive livelihood. So if a sales is happening in a company, then that is required for paying salary of people. No?
Yes.
So that is the term which I got when I asked a question to my team around 7-8 years before that. Do you know the impact of your work? And nobody answered. And I said, आपके काम के कारण 180 घर के चूल्हों में रोटी बनती है. Bread gets cooked in 180 households due to your work. So that is the livelihood aspect, the second part. The third part is customer value. हम काम करते हैं customer के लिए, correct ना? तो customer value में एक salespreneur वो चाहता है कि भाई tangible value जो है वो customer के लिए document करें और उसको monitor करें.
Right.
And जो चौथा aspect है, which is economic growth. A salespreneur believes that उसके काम के और उसकी टीम के काम के कारण, सेल्स के कारण कंपनी इकोनॉमी चलती है. क्योंकि अगर आप देखें, if you imagine that there is no sales happening for a day, क्या होगा? Just imagine that it is not happening for a week, like or it is down. Then क्या होगा? Stock market will crash. All those things will happen. Correct? So these are the 4 aspects, which is joy, livelihood, customer value, and economic growth. ये चारों elements है ना, these make social entrepreneurship.
Right.
And this is what I say, that salespreneur believes that sales is social entrepreneurship because of these 4 value areas.
Got it. So are you saying, or are you indirectly implying that you have seen this missing in a lot of salespeople that you've come across in your career, that you have had to sort of write about this explicitly?
Yeah, I think देखिए कहाँ पे आपको मतलब मैं अगर अपने एक्सपीरियंस की बात करूं तो मैं ये बोलूंगा कि ये मैंने ऑब्जर्व किया कि लोगों को पता भी नहीं रहता कि वो ये कर रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल जॉय लोगों को पता रहता है ना. I mean, people know that their work is creating, because when the email goes na, it creates joy. That people know. So the other aspects, if I look, customer value area है जो मैंने देखा है, lot of people know, and lot of people sometimes they are not aware of it, or sometimes that is defocused. So I wanted to certainly emphasize that sale is there only to create customer value, both tangible and intangible. So a lot of sales owners do that, and in certain cases, if it is not happening, then the need of the hour is it has to be done.
Right.
But the other 2 elements now, which is livelihood, which is to me a higher cost. Like one of the reasons why I'm very, very positively inspired about sales, in any circumstances, that I believe that wherever I work, मेरे काम के कारण and मेरी टीम काम के कारण, we have a higher responsibility कि भाई हमारे काम के कारण जो हमारी कंपनी में लोग हैं ना, उनकी तनख्वाह आती है. It is not about my incentive only, or it is not about my एक deal आ गई. Correct? It is not. Right. This is the element which I have seen, which generally people are not aware. They are aware of joy. They are maybe also aware of customer value. पर ये जो livelihood वाला part होता है ना company level पे. And then the fourth angle which I realized is that basically what is economic growth? Economic growth in simpler terms is a summation of sales, good sales happening across companies. Correct? So those 2 elements, I think मुझे लगता है कि कहीं ना कहीं लोग या तो मतलब उसके बारे में सोच नहीं पाते. इसलिए मैंने पूछा भी था अपनी टीम से कि आपको अपने काम की अहमियत पता है. है ना. So it's a matter of evangelizing these things sort of little more, correct. ऐसा नहीं है कि शायद क्योंकि कई बार सेल्स को ऐसे देखा नहीं गया ना, लोगों ने कहा डील ले आए चलो हो गया, है ना. तो वो मेरे हिसाब से ये बहुत बिकॉज आई माय फर्स्ट 12 years वर इन टेक्निकल फील्ड, है ना. तो आई हैव सीन ये जो फंक्शन है, दिस फंक्शन इज सो प्रोफाउंड, एंड देयर इज अ स्पिरिचुअल डायमेंशन टू दिस फंक्शन, बिकॉज अगर आपके काम के कारण जॉय बन रहा है, वैल्यू बन रही है, लाइवलीहुड बन रही है, और लोगों के घर में चूल्हा मतलब उस पर रोटी बन रही है, एंड देन देयर इज ग्रोथ, देन इससे बेहतर क्या हो सकता है. So I think that last two aspects needs to be more evangelized, Saurabh.
Totally makes sense. I'm with you on that one. In fact, if I could, maybe in some time in the future, we will, work together to sort of evangelize that a little bit more, because I strongly believe in that too. So, Amit, what is your inspiration behind writing this book, right? Because you spent a lot of time in sales, right? And why now? That is in 2019 when I picked up your book first time, right? What were some of the triggers that led you to write this book?
Yeah, Saurabh, I think thanks for asking that. I've actually mentioned that in the book also, that one is that there are I think 2-3 key triggers. One trigger is that personally I think that book helps us connect with the infinite classroom. It is an act of contribution and personal growth both. So this is one element I have noticed, that when we started writing, I started writing, what it does is an act of contribution, because whatever I know, I want to share with the larger community. And as a process, it is also an act of personal growth, because when you write now, you have to it's a very very interesting experience, because as you can understand, writing not only requires discipline, it requires research, it requires thinking, it requires reflection, correct. So that is one reason that I personally always as a person, whatever I have learned, can I share with others. And the second is, how can I grow myself more and more. So both elements, and I felt writing is that one thing which can address these two things very nicely. So that's one. The second is that around I think 2017 or something, I had watched a video called 3 Most Important Questions to Ask by Vishen Lakhiani. Vishen Lakhiani, founder of Mind Valley, one of the companies in personal development space. And that video said, basically it gives I think 1.5 minutes to ask 3 questions each. And the question is, what would you like to experience, what would you like to contribute, and what would you like to grow as, correct. So these were the 3 things. And I remember writing it on a piece of paper, and in that contribute section, I have written that I want to publish a book. Now, so the seed for writing a book was sown during that fifth 1.5 minute of that exercise when I was writing, correct. Now that was sown, and of course this concept of it is an act of contribution and personal growth, it further watered it. And then there was this idea was there, I have to write, but what to write, what is the topic, correct. What is the topic? That topic was held by another book called The One Thing,
right.
The book The One Thing, which I evangelize a lot, is an amazing book. So that book, The One Thing, is basically about that you have to focus on, I mean, the question is, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary. So basically razor sharp focus on one thing. So when I decided I had to write a book, the question was what to write, correct. So then at the breakfast time in one of the days, I asked a question. If somebody asked me, what is the one thing that contributed maximum to your success in sales, what would I respond? So that answer was use case selling. So then the answer was use case selling. Then I thought I will write my book on use case selling, and therefore the name came, the Ultimate Sales Accelerator. In fact, if you look at the subtitle, it is inspired by the book The One Thing, because the subtitle says surprisingly powerful strategy. Correct? One surprisingly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these are the 3 things, which is one is act of contribution and personal growth, number one. Number two is that video by Vishen Lakhiani, where I had to finish that exercise. And the third is the help from the book, The One Thing, which helped me ask the right question to get the topic of writing. So that's
cool. Makes sense. Which brings me to the one thing, right? What is the one? Of course, you mentioned it yet. Use case selling. Why are you a big evangelizer of use case selling, and why do you call it the ultimate sales accelerator?
Yeah, so use case selling. I mean, since you have, you are also a fellow evangelist of this, of use case selling. What I have seen is there are two terms. One is called buyer, and the other is user. Correct? In my experience of selling, this is my experience. It needn't be everybody's experience. In my experience of selling, what I have noticed is that buyer is the person who knows his or her requirements. A user is somebody who doesn't know the requirement. So what I noticed is, and I'll give you an example. For example, I went, and these examples are given in the book. So. Let me give you a B2B example, since we are talking on B2B context. So
sure.
I went to meet a particular, very senior CMO of a large bank in Asia. And as I entered, there were 6 other executives sitting, and the CMO was looking at me thinking, why am I there? I was representing a early stage startup, pivoted startup. And the CMO looked at me, and I asked, that can I ask you 3 questions? And he said, of course. So I said, could you please tell me what is the unique audience on your website? So he said 12 million. I said, okay. Then I asked the second question. Among these 12 million, thank you very much. Can you identify new to bank customers and existing customers? Suddenly he was surprised. And, he looked at, on his right side where 6 people were sitting, and their eyes were drooping down, and he looked at me back. State of anger, he told me no, and then I asked something which made him very angry. I said, can you personalize the experience of your existing customer on your website? He said, "Ye to tumko bola ki bhai, I can't even identify existing customers on my website. How can I personalize it?" Now, if you look at this example, before I asked these questions, he was a buyer. Correct?
Right.
Buyer thinks that I have all the software, I know my requirements, and that's during this, the way I have questioned him, only 3 questions. I have made him a user, which is basically the person doesn't know what he wants. So use case selling, while I will not share the structure of use case selling, since you read the book, it is a 4-part structure.
Right.
The key, the one thing about use case selling is that it transforms, it focuses on users. So it transforms buyer to user. It helps people unearth those unknown needs, helps people engage, like in this form of these 3 questions. Notice by asking these 3 questions, how easily the conversation happened. So that is the key, converting a buyer to a user. And the moment that happens, that delta need is created, and suddenly that trust gets created. So that's the one thing about use case selling.
Okay.
And again,
and why?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, please complete.
No, complete. Please go ahead.
Okay. No, I was about to ask that. I'm a believer in sort of cleaning out use cases very quickly. Although traditionally we've always learned about insight selling, right, and lately about challenger selling. I've personally seen that the moment we are able to discuss use cases of the product, again, obviously use case means from the point of user or multiple users of the product. I think any stakeholder on the table is able to imagine the situation and create a picture in their head much more easily, rather than talking about benefits and advantages, etc. My curiosity is, why do you call it the ultimate sales accelerator?
Okay, yeah. So like you mentioned that benefit selling or feature selling, and there are several other methodologies all are very nice, correct? Whether it is challenger sales or what I have seen is that the execution part, lot of things are there, and a lot of things are there maybe difficult to implement. In my personal experience, what I have seen is I am writing book on what I have experience. So if you look, since you have read the book, you would notice there are so many examples. All of them are from actual experiences. So through my experiences, what I found, what you were referring to, by that when we use use case selling, the communication becomes very simple. When communication becomes very simple, connection becomes very easy with people. It becomes very relatable. And because of that, in my experience, use case selling is the simplest strategy. Simplest strategy if it is followed. And why the ultimate sales accelerator is that, in my experience of working in startups, in very difficult startups that I have seen, where as you have also worked in startups, you will know how it works. Sometimes the product is not there in its early stage, correct? Or the you don't have enough funding to hire very experienced salespeople. You do not have offices in international, and you still have to sell international, and at a price higher than the top 3 players in that category. Also, you may have pivoted in like in one of the startups, we pivoted from one vertical to financial services. So I have gone through very tough situations in my startup, and where this style of selling, correct, which is what I call as use case selling, it was irrespective of which company I was at, because I was not from a top company. I was representing a startup. Our products were in early stages. We didn't have offices in internationally. Neither we had local presence. Our sales owners were relatively young, and so all, in spite of all the hurdles which you will see, use case selling helped. And that is the reason, in my experience, it is ultimate sales accelerator. And therefore, as a subtitle, I have written one surprisingly powerful strategy to create epic sales. The word epic sales in business and in life, because in all the experiences I have had, epic means something which was improbable. It's like India defeating West Indies in 1983 World Cup, correct? That's epic, because it was improbable. It created a milestone. So what I have seen is my sales career, both professionally and personally also. In that book, there are various examples, very difficult situations where it was not supposed to happen, correct? Because using this style of selling, which makes it very simple, using the 4-part structure given in the book, the use case selling, every time it worked. So that is the reason when I offered 10 titles for the book, by the way, and I ran a poll. And this was selected not by me. This was selected by a set of my well-wishers and set of my friends who actually voted this title the most. So there were 9 other titles, Saurabh. Not by me. I had just given them as one of the options out of 10. It was chosen, and it resonated quite well. And now you know the reason also.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's quite an apt title. So, Amit, very often we hear, right, and I see it on my LinkedIn feed all the time, and I see people discussing about it, that talk about benefits, not features. Talk about benefits, not features, right? And here, what you are essentially saying is, key features, to put it on the side, talk not even benefits, talk use cases. Right?
Correct.
What is the difference in the 2 approaches, and why is the use case selling approach better than the benefit selling approach?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example again in a B2B context. Is it B2B context okay, Saurabh, or you?
Yes, absolutely. No, B2B is okay. Personal, I will come to. Yeah. Sure.
So B2B, Saurabh, let's say we are meeting a head of e-commerce of an insurance company, correct? So what is feature selling? I'll give you 3 examples, in each. So feature selling, if I am meeting a head of e-commerce of in all three examples. First is feature selling. I'll say we will do real-time segmentation on your website and we will do real-time segmentation on your website to personalize experience for segment of one. That is one. This is what I call it feature selling, which is very, very what we say, what are difficult terms or jargons used. Okay? Not everybody may relate to, head of e-commerce may or may not know, these terms. Second is benefit. Suppose same person, I say, Mr. Head of e-commerce, through personalization, we will increase your conversion rate by 30%. That's the second, thing, So if a head of e-commerce is say, you may say, the person has just come, neither spoken about my needs, neither spoken about something directly saying 30%, So it can go any way, the trust can be, the person can also consider somebody pompous. The person can also say something which is normally associated with sales, which is, aise bol rahe, so that might be there. So the third one, let me give you example of use case. So I would say, Mr. So-and-so, thanks for meeting me. Before coming here, I just went to your website and I was buying a life insurance cover of 1 crore, and when I bought this, my premium was 12,833. And interestingly, I am a real buyer. It's not that I was doing for testing. I was really buying it. And, my wife called and I just went. And after 1 hour, I went again to your website to complete. But unfortunately, it didn't recognize me as a person who has done all of this. It asked me to start the experience again.
Okay.
So I felt very bad because 10 to 15 minutes I have spent in filling all the forms, generating the premium, correct?
Right.
Now I am coming back to your website, and this is happening, and I'm sure this is happening for all the other customers or the prospects of your brand. Is this something you would like to explore? Is this something which is really happening, or is this something you would like to explore and seek solutions for? Now, if you notice, in this third case, what will happen, and this all I'm telling from having done that, and when I speak in this language, what happens is, first of all, it is relatable. I'm not talking anything because I'm talking on the e-commerce head whose job is to look at website, correct?
Right.
The website is, if the person is looking, I am talking about experience which the person can't deny because it is the truth.
Agree. Yes.
And the person actually agreed. This is a real example, And the person said, "You're correct, Amit. This is a problem, So we have such a high drop rate. It is such a shame that our customers or our prospects who are spending so much time, and now when we are coming, we ask them, this is how can you help us?" So this is just an example of one. Now you only tell me, Saurabh, if you were head of e-commerce and if I was the salesperson, and first is real-time segmentation, the second is I will increase by 30%, and the third is this whole story of I went to your website and which one will help you get a better impression of me as a salesperson?
No, obviously, it is definitely not the first one, for sure. The choice is clearly between the second and the third one. And I personally find the third one to be more appealing simply because it's a simpler thing. There is no big, wide claim involved in it, right? Because benefits, ultimately, I think when salespeople say it, they come across as claims. Right?
Correct.
Unsubstantiated claims, according to me. Right?
Correct. You're absolutely right. That is the reason, Saurabh, in my quote, in the book, I have given a quote that features don't sell. Benefits sometimes sell. Use cases always sell. Correct?
Always sell.
And so in this way, what happens, even if I have to continue with, let's say, connect with this story only, that once I have created a use case like this, and if I say that, using this use cases, our customers A, B, C, D, correct, have improved their conversion rate by A, B, C, D, correct? And so this is one, the benefit has come. And then now, how do we do this? To do this kind of experience, we use real-time segmentation on your website, then what is happening? The narrative is changed. The narrative is coming, which was simpler, Saurabh, which is use cases. Then it came to, if required, once the rapport is built, because use case is the easiest thing to build rapport. Okay. When you talk about benefits, the other person, yeah, this person makes sense. Now he's talking about, okay, credibility building, the benefits are also there. And then he's saying how part. Okay, how part is that, okay, what technical capabilities do you do to make this happen? Okay. So in this way, sort of, I have found it, I'm not saying don't do feature selling. I'm not saying don't do benefits. What I'm saying is that if we start with feature and if we start with pure play benefit as we use, then the rapport is not created. It appears as you were saying, unsubstantiated claims or jargon-free communication. If we start with use cases and then when we go towards the other aspects, then the whole package becomes much better.
I agree. I think it's also a very nice way to ease into a conversation because when we are describing use cases, I think my personal experience has been that we are talking about them, right? We're talking about their scenario. Whereas when we talk about features and benefits, it's all me, us, So
yeah, Clint Eastwood said it is not about you, it's about them. So this is the point which you mentioned. Very nicely put. The first two style of selling is more about being pompous about hamara product, hamare benefit. The use cases is from a customer's perspective, and the moment it resonates, and that is the reason I say this is the simplest form of selling, okay? Because it easily connects.
Agree. I think I also now value using use cases a lot more because I don't know whether you've noticed this, Amit, or not, but in the last about 15 years, I've seen people's patience dwindle a lot. I think the average sort of buyer or the person tends to get triggered a lot more. They are much shorter on patience as compared to what I used to see 10 to 15 years ago. I think somewhere social media and all of this too much of sort of external stimulus is creating this impatience in people. So sort of time is of the essence. So I have to slide into conversations very, very quickly. Otherwise, I may have an excellent product, but I will not even get the opportunity to talk about it, right? So that also plays on my mind a lot.
I think you are spot on. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, going ahead, there is one concept that I'd like to talk to you about, which you talk about in the book, which is called story showing.
Yeah.
Right. Can you elaborate for our viewers what is story showing? I've heard about storytelling, but this is the first time I'm hearing about story showing.
Yeah, I think this term was made famous by a gentleman called Sam Cawthon, who has also written a book called Story Showing, by the way. Also, Lisa Nicholas, which I have quoted in my book, is again published author, has spoken about story showing. But just to give you an example, let me talk about this. Would you like a B2B example, or would you like a
B2B?
Okay. So let's say if I tell you this, I will tell you in telling and I will tell you in showing both. Okay.
Right.
So same example which we spoke to about the CMO. So I'll start storytelling. I met the CMO of a bank, and there were 6 people in the room, and then when we spoke, they were looking at me, why are you here? And then I asked, I said, can I ask you 3 questions? And he said, yes, you can. And I said, what is the number of unique visitors on your website? He said, it is 12 million. I then said, thank you. And I said, can you identify existing customers versus new to bank customers on your website? He said, he looked at me and he said, no, I can't. And then I asked a question which made him a little angry. I said, can you personalize the experience on the website? He said, I just told you that I can't even identify. So how can I personalize? So this is an example of storytelling. Okay, I'll stop here. Now let me show the story. Okay, you know. So I met a large bank CMO and when I entered the room, it's a very big room with a center table, it's like a boardroom, and on the just like when the head of a family sits, a CMO was sitting in tie, and there were 6 people sitting on his right, and they were all suited, booted in tie, and there was a tense atmosphere in the room because maybe since bank was very big, they were thinking, why are you here even? They didn't mention it. Yes, I could see the palpable tension, and in this state I asked, can I ask you 3 questions, please? And he said, of course you can. So I said, what is the number of unique visitors on your website? He said 12 million. I asked, thank you very much. What is among these 12 million, can you identify your existing customers and your new to bank prospects? And he looked at me, and then he looked on his right, and, looking at the eyes of the 6 SVP sitting, and they looked at him, and, I could see anger in his eyes. Their eyes were, the 6 SVP's eyes were low. And then he looked at me on my left, and he said, no. and then I looked at him and I said, whatever I asked made him very angry. I said, can you personalize the experience of your existing customer? He said, I just told you that I can't even identify existing customers. How can I personalize? So stop. So you would have noticed, this is the first part was storytelling, another is story showing. What difference did you notice?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is, in first part, it was, or rather in the second part, you were using a live example from their company, and I think you were using that with a series of questions to help them imagine it better. It was very contextual, right? So they could imagine it in their head, which in the first case I don't think they were able to.
Okay. So you're correct, Saurabh. See, basically, story showing, when we say it brings in element of emotions. It brings in elements of simple thing like hand movement. If you notice, so in the first, when I was speaking, if you see this video, I was not moving my hands. Whereas in the second, when I'm doing story showing, it requires more of you. More of you, where you are involved in that conversation. Hand movement is one thing. Leveraging your emotions. If you also notice, when I was talking about story showing, I described a lot of details. I would have said that there was a large room, there was a center table in the middle. There were 6 SVPs sitting on the right side of the CMO. So when we make this in this descriptive way, it becomes visual in nature. Correct? So when listeners start seeing this in their mind, even though they may not be aware, they will be able to see. When I said, there was anger on his face, so it was not only on his face, it was on my face, because I am that CMO when I'm. Whereas in the first storytelling, I was just telling it. I was not living that experience. So that is the key difference between storytelling and story showing.
Got it. So Amit, there is a question coming from Sonu, and he's saying that he's read the book and he finds the story with the bank awesome. So he's asking a question, how I can articulate the right questions to be asked to a client. Now, for that, obviously, you'll have to, since you already read the book, I'm assuming what he's asking is that he wants to use case selling. But how does the articulation take place? Well, I mean, I know that ultimately you've described it in the book, but would you want to respond to this?
Yeah, of course. I think sure. So if the person, I mean Sonu, correct? Sonu.
Yeah, Sonu.
Sonu. So Sonu, if you have read the book, there is a section called Mount Everest of Needs. which described in the book. And if you are able, whatever you are selling, let's say you are selling CRM or marketing automation or any software ERP, if you fill that market, Mount Everest of needs, and the template is given on my website salespreneur.co. I've given the template also. Password is in the book. You can download it. So if you fill it for whatever you are selling, what will happen now? Your expertise level in that particular area, whatever you are selling, will increase. Once your expertise increases, now questions comes easily. So the problem is that when we can prepare for question, that's not, preparation is always good. But then in my book also I have mentioned, if you read the 10th chapter, what is the future of B2B sales? So I have mentioned clearly the future of B2B sales is a doctor. The sales owner has to be doctor, meaning doctor has two traits. One is deep expertise in an area. The doctor is eye doctor, heart doctor, deep expertise in an area. And on y-axis, extraordinary communication. You go to a doctor, they will create rapport very easily. So expertise on x-axis, communication on y-axis. In this case, to get questions, expertise is the most important thing. You see, when you go to a doctor, they will ask questions. अच्छा क्या प्रॉब्लम है आपको, अच्छा बुखार है कि नहीं, ये गर्दन ऐसे करिए, इधर करिए, because they are deep experts. So the question is how to become deep expert in sales and what you're selling. Use case selling is a 4-part structure. There are various structures given in the book. One of the structures which is very helpful is this Mount Everest of needs, which if you just fill, because it addresses needs across known needs which are unmet, known needs with resistance to change, and unknown needs. So for any product line, if you are able to fulfill this, correct, automatically your expertise level will increase, and then you will be able to ask questions on those things which really make a difference. You will not ask questions on things which are already met. You will ask questions on the things which are either unmet or with resistance to change or unknown. So it requires work, Saurabh and Sonu, because it requires a little bit of diligence.
Absolutely. No, and that is why we are having this video series, because a lot of this knowledge needs to be disseminated so that people can use it. I think Mount Everest of needs, it's a very catchy way of putting it across, right? And expertise is something that one has to invest time in, right? To build. One has to not just put themselves in the shoes of the buyer, they have to actually start going, meeting buyers, meet their ideal sort of client profile, understand the way the company works. There's so many dimensions to a company running and then eventually buying products, right? So that kind of investment has to be done. And I think that framework is very critical, the one that you have given in the book. I've read that. So I definitely recommend to everyone. Cool. So Amit, I'm now in the sort of the last 10 minutes of our conversation. So I want to, two topics which I want to touch upon. Number one is, you have also in the book talked about personal, how you can use case selling in personal life, right? Can you talk to our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. I'll give an example of, again, the structure of use case selling. The reason I don't share in any forum yet is that it's a 4-part structure. Let me give you a metaphor for it. So there is there is a PhD, correct? PhD. How many years does PhD take, sort of in your
5 to 6 years, 5 years,
5 to 6 years, isn't it? Correct. And
Mm-hmm.
there is another form of PhD called honorary PhD, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
And generally honorary PhD is given, because of your experience in some other field. But let's say somebody gets an honorary PhD in physics, but that doesn't mean that the person is expertise in physics, isn't it? Correct. So the reason I don't share use case selling 4-part structure till now, is because it is like honorary PhD. I will tell that 4-part structure. People will say, wow, very simple. But my philosophy on this is execution. That when you read the book and you implement use case selling 4-part structure, checklist is given in the book. You can download it from the website also. If you implement in 10 examples, business plus life combined, then you will develop some expertise. So that is the reason I recommend that read the book and implement in 10 examples. So coming back to example of use case selling. So let's say one of the example is that when I was having this loans of multiple houses, and I used to feel it was a very big transformation element in my life. So since you asked personal life, I think that's perhaps the and since working in startups, I'm getting a salary, and I'm 70% on plane, because I'm in enterprise sales. I'm 70% on plane, so I enjoy that, and because of that, I don't even know what amount is getting cut from my salary as loans. And at one point of time, I had 6 loans, correct? And I had closed 4 loans, and 2 of them were there, and I think the amount was around 1.25 lakh rupees or something was getting, and so I was not even aware that this is getting cut. But when I was reflecting on it, when I was working, then I found out there is 1.25 lakh. And then the challenge was that I had 2 houses, one in Hyderabad and one in Bangalore, for which I was paying loan. And the point was, if I sell one house, correct, which is Hyderabad house, then I can pretty much close both loans. Okay. But I had not done it for, maybe I was busy, I was not savvy in personal finance, which is all truth, correct? But I didn't. But then one of the element is, whenever I tried to bring this concept with my wife, can we sell Hyderabad house? We said, it's a very nice house, which of course I can't disagree. Which is very nice house. He said, we lived there only for 9 months. That also is truth. I can't disagree. And she said, we can also go to Hyderabad. So that also I've spent 6.5 years in Hyderabad. It's a very dear place. So that also, because of that, every time I go to her, she will give me some reasoning which is logical or emotional, or what more emotional, and I will say, and then this will happen. So what happened is, one particular day when I just found out through a conversation through the bank, that basically I've taken a 40 lakh loan, correct? I've paid for almost 9 years, correct? And what I realized is, I've paid 45 lakh rupees, out of which principal was only paid for 15 lakhs and 30 lakhs was interest.
Whoa.
So, I was very sad that day and angry on myself that I am paying this from 9 years. I have paid 30 lakh, 45 lakh, 30 lakh is interest, 15 lakh, and I am still pending 25 lakhs of principal. And with this, I went to my wife and I said, with this data, but I said, Ashi, when did we take our house? She said, yeah, we took it in Hyderabad 9 years. I said, do you remember how much loan we took? She said, yeah, 40 lakh rupees. And I said, can you guess how much it is pending now? Said, we are paying from so many years. It should be about to close. So I said, no. The reality is that we have paid 45 lakh rupees in 9 years, out of which only 15 lakh has gone to principal. 30 lakh has been an interest. That means we have 25 lakh of principal is pending. And she looked at me and said, what? Her mouth was, she was surprised. After paying for 9 years, at that point of time, we both thought either we are stupid or we have done some wrong thing. We were both in deep pain. Okay? But once I said this, it created the required emotions, all of that. And then she said, why don't we sell the house now? Because enough of this. And then we sold the house, and very quickly, and then we closed both the loans. Right. Now, if you see in the book, this entire experience is given, and in the 4-part use case selling structure, it is given that how I had purposely addressed this. So this is not a normal conversation. I have thought about it. So the beauty of use case selling is that once you master it, or once you become good at it, you can use any conversation or any discussion in that. So this was one. My wife didn't knew that point of time that I was using use case selling with her. I told her later, because I had failed miserably, and which has costed us a lot of money. But when we use this, it worked, and we sold the house. And I have written a LinkedIn blog also in this, that from feeling that my hands are in chains and my legs are tied, I'm walking. From that, I felt free when my debt was closed for both of them. And what helped me? Use case selling.
Wonderful. So basically, अब मैं ये बोलूँगा that use Ultimate Sales Accelerator to improve your relationship with your spouse. That's how I will market the book now.
Please, I would be grateful to you. In fact, a lot of people have reached out to me. I felt very good, Saurabh, when somebody said that my sales in B2B or B2C has improved. But I felt most wonderful when somebody, a homemaker, or somebody has reached out to me, or a father has reached out to me. One mother reached out to me saying that her daughter was not going to karate classes.
Okay.
And she used use case selling, to talk, to converse with her. And in less than 1 minute, she said, and then she messaged me that I have used use case selling to converse with my daughter, and she is now going to karate classes. So the most amount of joy which I get is when people use sales as a life skill. And use case selling is one of the most potent arsenal to make sales as a life skill. So that's the you can market it that way, sort of.
No, wonderful. I think that's a fair thing. I mean, at the end of the day, what is selling? I mean, it's exchange of ideas, right? You're trying to
Ideas.
say that.
Exactly.
Yeah, my idea. Please adopt my idea. That's what you're really
Right.
saying, right? Cool. So last part of last question in this samvad, Amit, is I have seen that you've created a Salespreneur website, right? You have your own YouTube channel. Clearly, there is there is something on your mind. There is a message you want to convey. There is something going on, some higher mission or purpose that you are at. So, what is that higher mission and purpose, and what message do you want to give to our viewers before we end this broadcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, see, if there is one message I have is that we all have to harness sales as a life skill. Correct. So the moment we consider sales as a life skill rather than a profession, it becomes easier, because as a parent, we are selling, and like you mentioned, in exchange of ideas, correct? If we are selling an idea to our children, that don't play a video game. It requires a very strong selling skills, Saurabh. You will also know, you are also
Yeah.
correct.
Yes, yes.
So similarly, if you are, let's say, a CEO, you have to pitch to an investor. It requires selling an idea. Okay?
Right.
If suppose you are in sales, in actual sales, then you have to sell your demo or product. If you are an employee and if you ask for a salary raise, sort of, correct? Then also it requires. I've seen, I mentioned in the book also. One of my colleague mentioned this is happening for 2 years, man. I'd get a lower single digit raise. When will it stop? So so what I have seen is that all these examples, this is, if we, like, one key message is that if we all believe that sales is a life skill, okay, then it will become pervasive, and we will not only create impact at our workplace, we will start creating impact in our personal life, and even in our social life, in our community life. So that is my one key message. And as far as that is my strong desire, that also whatever I'm working on, whether you mentioned YouTube channel, whether it is my website, whether my book, I am evangelizing sales as a life skill, correct? And that will continue through all these means. and I look forward to all the support and I hope that people embrace this idea more and more, that sales is a life skill.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and they will, Amit. Thank you so much for coming on this Samvad. I hope that you're in your mission, that you may succeed, and it वो फले फूले और लोगों को पता चले, more people sort of come into that fold, and I will always wish that.
Thank you.
आप मैं अभी ब्रॉडकास्ट बंद करने वाला हूँ, आप मत जाइएगा कहीं. आई नीड टू टॉक टू यू मोर. Thank you, viewers, for watching this Samvad, and I'll keep you updated on the future Samvad which are coming next week. Thank you so much for your time. Good night.